Good afternoon, and welcome to another riveting session of ENG4E. That's Workplace Preparation English for Term 2A, brought to you by WASA Distance Education Center, located in Sioux Lookout, Ontario. I'm your instructor for this course, Mike Laverty, and today's date is Tuesday, March the 28th, 2023. Today's date marks class 25 of our discussions. So we have 34 classes in total. So we are firmly into the final 1/3 of our classes together. And we are moving ahead with our discussion of Unit 4. So Unit 4 is the last unit that we will discuss together before we go on to some preparation for the final exam and spending a little bit more time talking about our novel, Where the Rivers Meet. But today's class will focus primarily on the final key question of the course itself, key question 40, and that's to do with interview questions. So as mentioned, we are in week 7 of classes in this course. We have 9 weeks in total. 9 weeks of classes, 9 weeks of broadcasting classes to you. And graduation day is June the 15th. So I want to once again take the time to talk about that date as it approaches, as we are now less than 3 months away from graduation. In a couple of weeks, it'll only be 2 more months until that graduation date. So realistically, you've got a little bit over 2 months to complete your assignments, to get a credit, to continue your journey towards graduating with your Ontario Secondary School Diploma. And there's a whole team of people here at WASA who want you to achieve that goal. But in order to do that, you've got to be realistic about your time, about how much you can commit, and 2 months, you could probably get 1 credit taken care of, and 2 might be pushing it, right? So just be realistic with your time, and if you need to, I would suggest reaching out to someone at WASA, in particular, a guidance counselor, one of our counselors who can guide you through. So I'll give some contact information in an upcoming slide. So we took care of Unit 1, 2, and 3. And we started week 4 last week, and we'll need, a few more classes to finish off Unit 4, because we have to discuss the culminating activity. And the culminating activity in Unit 4 is actually worth 10% of your final grade. So it's your unit work adds up to 70%. You've got a final exam, which is worth 20%. And the culminating activity from Unit 4 is where we get this last 10%, right? So it's the culminating activities for Units 1, 2, and 3 are included with your unit work. So 70 plus 20 is 90. 90 plus 10 gives you 100% of your final grade. We'll spend week 8, so the week after after this week, talking about the novel study, and then have a whole full week to talk about the final exam. So if you're listening to us on the airwaves, thanks for tuning in at 91.9 FM, or maybe you're listening to us on Bell ExpressVu, channel 972. Please note that you can always phone in to the studio at 1-807-737-4017, or by joining us toll-free at 1-800-465-7144. Or you can go to zoom.us or the Zoom app on your phone. Click on Join. Once you've clicked on Join, you can enter our meeting ID, which is 417-6699-799. If you can't listen to us live or watch us live, then you can view the archived classes. So look for me on youtube.com. If you search Laverty Wassa, that's my last name, Laverty at Wassa, you'll find my YouTube channel. And if you type in, Wassa on YouTube, you'll find a whole bunch of teachers who are putting up their courses on Wassa. So there's tons of great content on there, and you can even request a USB stick, and then we can save the courses, save the classes to a USB stick, and then you can plug that into any device. If for example, you don't have reliable internet, or maybe you're going to be somewhere where you don't have the internet, so it's just a way for you to access the material if you can't actually stream them off of YouTube. So just a friendly reminder, if you are 6 months into the, sorry, not 6 months, 6 weeks into the course, your suggested progress for this point is to have all of Unit 1 and 2 taken care of. The novel should be read, and you should be working on your Unit 3, if not Unit 4 assignments. Just want to make sure that you're staying on task and giving yourself some guidelines for finishing all of the required assignments for this course, because there is a lot. So there are 40 key questions, and as you'll have noticed if you've come this far, is that some of them require a lot of bit of work. So that's 40 assignments. Some of them are, very quickly done, just 1 mark, but some of them are extensive and worth upwards of 20 marks, not to mention your 4 culminating activities. So if you want to get this credit, you got to put in a lot of work, and you have to plan out your time accordingly. So it takes, and so I really encourage you, taking the 10 weeks or longer, if you've got it, to complete the assignments. And that includes you regularly submitting work and getting feedback on it, because that's a huge part of a communications course. So this is an English course, of course, but it's also primarily to do with a specific kind of writing, which is business writing. So you need to have that give and take. You need to submit work to your teacher, and I need to guide you and give you some feedback on how to make your writing even better, which is what happens when people submit work. I can't remember how many times, and I've only been doing this for a few months, really, but just people I think people are perhaps too critical of their writing and reading abilities, and they say like, oh, I struggle with reading and writing, I can't I can't do this course, or I'm really going to struggle with this. And then they start writing, and they start handing in stuff to me, and I can see that they've really kind of sold themselves short, and their skills are much better than they thought they were. So, and they're only going to get better the more they practice them. All right, so with that note, let's get off onto a great start, best foot forward. So today's lesson, we'll talk about words of the day. So on the second day of the week, which is usually a Tuesday, unless excuse me, unless we miss a Monday, but on the second day of the week, I like to introduce a 1 or 2 or even 3 Anishinaabe-Moan words, and then I like to talk about an English word that's an equivalent. One sec, just excuse me. Okay, and I'm back. And so we'll talk about the words of the day, and then we'll talk about key question 40, which is about the interview questions. So what I'd like you to do is to take notes as we analyze and respond to the interview questions, which is, of course, key question 40. I would like you to consider a position you would like to apply for and imagine yourself interviewing for this opportunity. So that's a really important learning goal. So I just want you to, go back to the assignment when you were writing your cover letter. So just make sure I have, I believe it's 37. Or no, sorry, 38. So in 37 was the job application form, and assignment 38 was writing a cover letter. And so when you wrote that cover letter, you were thinking about a specific job you could apply for. So I want you to consider that position again, think about that position, and then I want you to picture yourself sitting down across from somebody or maybe two people, and just really visualize yourself sitting down for that interview, putting in a solid cover letter and resume that gets you the interview, and just envision yourself sitting in that interview, doing well, answering the questions with confidence, right? So just picture that situation and picture it going well. Which is great advice that I like to give people, and I like to give myself from time to time. There's lots of research that backs up what I'm saying, and it's people they greatly benefit from the act of visualization. So actors do this. Athletes will do this. High performance athletes, they spend a lot of time visualizing themselves being successful. They picture themselves executing the moves in a certain way. They walk themselves through it. They try to picture their body, doing the movements. And if you visualize yourself, in that interview, being confident, answering questions, play it out in your mind, pretend like they're going to ask you questions, respond to those questions. When you go to that interview, I guarantee you, you're going to appear that much more confident, that much more ready, and hopefully that much more hireable, right? So that much more desirable to the people interviewing you. So I'm hoping your success criteria that you can begin drafting responses to your chosen interview questions. So we're going to talk about the interview questions, and then you're going to talk about your chosen, the questions that you want to that you want to talk about. So more on that in a second. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I think I may have made a mistake there. Let's see. Let's see. You are now going to develop answers for the following list of 10 questions. Sorry. Sorry, not chosen. So you don't choose them. You have to write about all 10, right? And we will talk about all 10 today, right? So you have to answer these questions. All right. So here's our words of the day. So we have nandawanoki, which is a verb, which is he or she looks for work, looks for a job, and we have dananoki, which is another verb, which is she or he works in a certain place, right? And then if you notice, they both have this N-O-K double I ending. That's what we call a not a prefix. That's what we call a suffix. So a suffix is the part of the word that comes at the end, and it looks like the suffix no-ki is about employment and looking for work. So good to pay attention to those word parts as you study a language that you're trying to learn or trying to get better at. And English is no different, right? So once you start to memorize and understand these suffixes and prefixes and the parts of the words, and like the Latin roots and all that, you start to guess what the word means, right? So it's just important to pay attention to how the word is comprised. Now, a couple of English words that come to mind are dialogue and monologue. So a dialogue is a conversation between two or more people, right? So and a monologue is a form of dramatic entertainment, a comedic solo, or the like by a single speaker. So, for example, like on late night television, most of the late night television people, like Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, they'll have an opening monologue where it's just them. So mono means one, log or logos means the word, so or to speak. So a monologue is literally one speaker. When you watch a play, If it's Shakespeare, they call it a soliloquy, but most plays, if it's just one person talking, and usually that's done to record their inner thoughts. They're speaking to the audience. They're not speaking to other characters. You're hearing their inner thoughts. And it's also a prolonged talk or discourse by a single speaker, especially one dominating or monopolizing a conversation, right? So in that case, that's me, unless of course you phone in and participate in the online discussion. Otherwise, it becomes a monologue. It just becomes me speaking. But an interview process is a dialogue, conversation between two people. All right. So before we dive into our discussion on interview questions, what I would like to do is I would like to show you my resume from yesterday. So let's go to File. Let's open up. So yesterday we looked at an example of a resume, and that came from LinkedIn. This was LinkedIn.com, and they had an example of a resume that we could use. Let's see if I can just pull it up through my email real quick here. There it is. That's my receptionist email. And then I had the sample 2. There we go. Ebony Moore. So that's how it looked, right? So just wanted to wrap up this discussion real quick before we go into our interview discussion. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the person's name, Ebony Moore, and I could even put my name instead, Mike Laverty. And what we're really just doing here is just using typography. And so if we're using Microsoft Word, we have a thing at the top of the screen, which I've mentioned before. It's called the ribbon. And the ribbon is where all your tools are, all of the functions you can use to edit your document, to make certain words stand out, that kind of thing. So if you go to Home, one of the main things is the font, and we can make font bold, italicized font. We can underline it. We can put a strike through. We can make it bigger. We can make it smaller. We can put an outline on it. We can color it. We can highlight it, right? So all I'm really doing here is I'm just bolding my name, and I'm going to use going to go with the 22 point font, right? So that's the size of it, right? And then if we go back to their example, yeah, so we've got basically a few examples here. So we've got really big font for the person's name, smaller font for their contact information, and then the summary, and they've got this little vertical line here in between it all, right? So you could do that. Let's see, summary could be, yeah, so my main headings are going to be in that 14-point font. And let's see how they and since I want to focus on my experience more, I'm going to go summary. And remember, you can do summary or you can do an objective. And if we go back to Indeed.com, so what they did was they've got the name of the employer listed in all caps. Then they put the job title, and then they've put the date where the person worked. So you've really just got to find a consistent way to do that, and then to do it every time. So they've got the name of the business, the job, and the date. So you can mix this around. If you watched my demonstration yesterday, I think I started with the date and then put where I worked and the job title. So as long as those three ingredients are there, as long as you have those three paths, or not paths, but parts of a, because you're listing your job experience. So you have to list when you worked there, where you worked, and you have to list the job title. And they've chosen to use capital letters to distinguish the name of the place where they were working with the job. So if I'm only going to spend a few more minutes on this, but I just want to show you how you can do this. So they've got it formatted like that, and then all of the job postings, not the job postings, sorry, the job duties were listed in a bullet point. So you could select which kind of bullet point you want. The check marks will make a lot of sense. The arrows have a nice look. Maybe just simply go with the bullet point. Yeah, so I'll put the bullet point in there. And then, so as long as all of this is, as long as all this looks more or less the same. See, I kind of like the pipe put in the middle, right? So where we worked, the dates when we worked there. And when you format things, consistency is the most important, right? You just got to make sure you format things consistently. You do it the same way for each one. So just make sure you follow the same formatting for each one of your items. And there we go. So I've got summary, I've got experience, and then I'm going to follow a similar pattern for my education. And then, so again, just you want to keep things simple. If you can, I would suggest trying to get everything onto one page. So I would keep that in mind as I tab this thing up. I might want to put less space in between them. I don't want things to look too crowded, but that actually works. And you typically want to have all of your stuff on one page. You don't really want to go beyond that. I've got my skills, and I might have enough space, I should say, to talk about my interests. Let's see, skills are 14. Okay, so there we go. And so I might look at the formatting, might just try and use a smaller font as I try to get all of that squished onto one page. It just helps if your employer can see all of your contact information at a glance. Maybe one thing I'll just show you real quick is if you go to the design, and one way you can do this, layout, the margins. I'm actually going to put narrow margins on here, and so you can fit more information on the page, though it is nice to leave maybe moderate. Yeah. One thing you can also do is sort of like take this information here, cut it right out, and then make that my header. That's going to give me a lot more room too. And then I might even have references. So there you go. I've gotten much closer to getting this thing to how I want to look at. And this is basically what you want to do for your resume. Just keep it simple. Keep a simple layout. You don't need to have any fancy visual elements. They can be there. You can add some bullet points, but you just want to organize your information and do it in a consistent manner. Okay, so let's go back to our slide decks here. And then in your unit assignment, they give you some general tips for writing an interview, and then I'd like to just go over some of those general tips and strategies with you now. So before the day of an interview, learn as much as you can about the business, company, organization you could be working for. So if we think about we live in the information age, so you need to be consulting websites. You need to look at their social media feeds, their Facebook, their Twitter, They might have an Indeed.com page. They might have a LinkedIn page, right? So these are professional job sites. So look at the websites, look at the social media, look at Indeed.com. Google the business. See if you can find any articles written about them in the media, right? Any press stories. Find out what they're up to right now. So you've got no excuse for this. Everyone can do this. Research the company you're applying for. Talk to people who've worked there. Arm yourself with information. The second tip is to think about possible questions that you can go through, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at those potential questions, and bonus marks if you can role play with a family member. That is awesome. So if you got a friend that can practice this with you and take the assignment seriously, I would do that. So and then an important pointer: you may not be the only person who's being interviewed for this job. So if you get the interview, it shows that you're in the running, but you have to compete with people. And speaking from experience, it often does come down to the interview, especially when people have identical or very similar qualifications. Then you've got to see how they do in the interview. So if you've got someone who can role play with you, get them to do that. When I was in teachers college, we had a volunteer opportunity where a principal of a school interviewed me for a job that it didn't exist, so he wasn't really interviewing me for a job that I could apply for, but he did do an actual interview that he does do at that school, and then I got like a page or two of feedback, which was amazing, right? So it's like I learned what I did well, I learned where I kind of messed up, I learned where I had to do more research, right? So it was like when I asked you about this program, you just blanked out and didn't say anything. That wasn't good, so it's like, you never want to say no or I don't know. You always want to say something. But if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. But at least you can be honest about it and just, say that you'll look. Or if you've seen the Will Smith movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, there's a great scene where he's being interviewed and he says, you know what, I may not know the answer, but I can definitely figure it out and find out where to get it. All right, arrive for the interview appropriately dressed at least a few minutes before it's scheduled to begin. When the big moment arrives, greet the interviewers, usually at least 2 people, with good eye contact and firm handshakes. So just, let them know you're there. It's okay to be nervous. That's kind of what they expect, and I always saw nervousness as a good thing, right? It means the person cares. But, be there early and be ready to go. Try to relax and be as confident as you can, maintaining good posture and eye contact. Listen carefully to each question asked by the interviewers and be honest in your responses to each one. It is important to just be yourself. So what I'd mention there is when someone asks you a question, don't feel like you got to rush into it. A really good strategy you can do is just to pause, take a breath, compose yourself, think about how you want to start your answer, and then start it, right? And then you can even kind of prompt your interviewers and say, like, okay, I'm going to think about that for a second. Okay. You can rephrase the question. You can always ask them to repeat it. But, as we've mentioned in this class a few times, it can often be important to just simply rephrase the question and just take it from there. Show some genuine interest and enthusiasm while you are answering the questions, and try to ask at least one question of your own. So great advice there. Just show them you really want the job, and ask questions about the questions if you need something clarified. And if they say, is there anything else you'd like us to know, then have something ready to go, right? Or make something up, say something, right? Just if they ask that question, ask a question about the job, when it would start, benefits, just have things to say. And, people who have questions are people who have done research, right? If you show up to an interview unprepared and you just sort of wing it, then you're not going to have things come to mind, right? And if you do the research and, if they allow you to bring in your notes, that's probably best case scenario. But, people who've done the research, it's pretty clear that they've done the research because they have lots of questions. When the interview is over, thank the interviewers for their time and leave the room promptly. Remember that a job interview is a formal meeting and you have to be as professional about the whole thing as you can from beginning to end. After all, it is you as a potential employee who is hoping to be a successful candidate instead of someone else, right? So again, it's about being honest and it's about being professional and treating them with the respect they deserve. They may be friendly, but they're probably not your friends, and it is a competitive environment, but as long as you conduct yourself professionally and be polite and thank them for their time, you'll do just fine. This point is really just about, not pushing any kind of personal boundaries, right? Don't talk to them like they're your buddy. Don't talk to them like they're a friend. Again, you can be friendly, but what you're doing here is you're showing deference, right? And when you show deference, you're like, I'm asking for a job. You can give me one. You've got my full attention and respect, and just show it to them accordingly. All right, so for key question 40, we are assuming that you've put in the job application form, you've handed in your cover letter, they've seen your resume, you've got, they've checked your references. Now they want to give you an interview, right? So you get the telephone call that you are being offered an interview for the job. It has not been filled yet. You are now going to develop answers for the following list of 10 questions, which could be asked in an actual interview for the position. You are to respond using complete sentences. All right, so for our remaining 20 minutes here, I'll go through all of these questions and break them down and to talk about just some general strategies for answering these questions. Just some general pieces of advice that you could follow, and some actual answers that you might want to use, and just a general strategy for answering the questions. All right, so there are 10 in total, and you need to plan out some responses to each one. So respond using complete sentences. Probably want to have 2 or 3 sentences for each response. And I've actually I've done something that was similar to this for a job interview, but never actually wrote down a list of 10 questions, answered my questions, right? So it's very useful. I think this could be very, very useful for securing a job. All right, so why did you apply for this position? So I want to mention a couple of things. Basically, why do you want to work here, or why do you want to work? Go beyond getting paid, right? You want to talk about the position. So keep your focus on the position. What about it excites you, right? Mention duties and responsibilities that are associated with this job. So, as I've mentioned many times in this course, and when I give feedback on my assignments, be specific, right? Talk about the job you want. Talk about a specific part of it. I'm looking forward to doing that. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? All right, so they know who you are because they've read your application form, they've read your cover letter, they've read your resume, they've got a pretty good idea of who you are. But for question 2, you are providing a summary of who you are professionally. Right? So this is you as a professional, as a working person. Right? So you need You need a short bio. You know, you can use, right? So maybe like 15 to 20 words, right? I think I've mentioned the elevator speech in this class before. The elevator speech, of course, being, you know, you're a screenwriter and you're in a room with Quentin Tarantino or your famous producer, and you've got like 10 seconds to pitch your big idea. So same goes here. Tell us a bit about yourself. So you're rattling off like a short biography. You know, this is who I am. I'm a teacher. I'm an English teacher who believes in empowering students through teaching them practical writing skills, right? So I'm just shooting from off the hip here, just making stuff up, but that's who I am, right? So that's a brief summary of me as a professional, right? I'm an English teacher who gets excited about teaching others how to communicate and, you know, that kind of thing. What do you consider to be your biggest strengths, right? So you want to, you want to have, or let's just say, I would say select 2 to 3 strengths, and then you're going to list them. You're going to list those strengths. And have quick examples. That I guess that back them up. So I am organized. I am decisive. I am insightful. I am a great communicator, right? I'm a mentor, right? I'm a mentor who has encouraged many people to pursue, graduation through my interactions with students, for example. So if I'm talking about me, right? So have 2 or 3 strengths lined up, and then, have a quick example that helps back them up. Do you have any experience doing this kind of work? And if so, can you briefly describe it for us? All right, so that's one of the easier questions, and so you're simply bringing up your previous experience, but once again, be specific. What you want to do here is you want to mention a specific job. A specific job you had, or maybe you have it because sometimes when you apply for a job, you're still working in the previous job. So be specific. Mention a specific job you had or have, and and situations where you did well. So, if I'm applying for a different teaching job, I'm going to refer back to my experiences as a supply teacher, as an elementary school teacher, right? So, yes, I did work as a supply teacher at this school, and I had a lot of success working in the primary grades where I developed my classroom management skills, right? So it's you bring up a specific example, like, yes, I worked in this job doing this, and I was successful, doing these things, right? So on the surface, the question is just saying, do you have experience, similar experience, right? So, and that's something that it needs mentioning, and I always told this to my applicants when I deliver job interviews. Some questions, they may seem like yes or no questions on the surface, but these interview questions are rarely yes or no questions. And at least from my experience, people often said too little. Like that seemed to be the common issue that I had with my applicants is they would often say too little. They would leave questions unanswered. They would just simply say yes or no, right? Like if you're asked, like, are you a team player? Do you enjoy working as part of a team? You know, everybody's going to say yes to that question, right? If you say no to that question and the job you're applying for requires you to be part of a team, then that's going to be a huge red flag to the employer, right? You know, if you're working in customer service and you're part of a team of, say, 10 people, like at a grocery store, like you're a part of a team of cashiers, right? And they ask you, do you enjoy working as part of a team? And you just say no, that's going to be a huge red flag, and it's going to be hard for them to give you that job. But on the other hand, if you just simply say yes, they expect everyone to say yes. It's got to be yes and. Like, yes, I'm a team player, and this is proven by my experience at these jobs, or you know, like, I like being part of a team. Being part of a team fires me up. It's what I'm looking forward to, right? You've got to put a positive spin on it. Name a weakness that you have, right? Okay, so this has got to be a real weakness. Don't say, don't say something that's really a compliment, right? Like, don't say, "Oh, I'm a workaholic," or "I work too hard," or like it's unless you can spin that right into so. When we talk about our weaknesses, we have to find a way to turn them into a strength, right? So talk about a real weakness that you struggle with, and then perhaps more importantly, talk about dealing with it. So, if I'm thinking about my experience being a teacher, and if I'm being completely honest, I think that one of the things that I've often struggled with was classroom management and being an authority figure, and truly embracing that role as the authority figure in the room, and sort of cracking down and maintaining, a structured environment for all of the kids involved. This is me thinking about being an elementary teacher, right? So that is a real weakness that I had and have, but I've worked on that weakness in a variety of ways. So I would suggest to you to bring up a real weakness you have. Again, be specific. And so the employer, I would think, is genuinely interested in knowing about your weaknesses. They want to know your strengths. They want to know your weaknesses. But I would argue that the true purpose of a question like this is to be like, okay, how do you deal with your limitations, right? And how aware are you of your own limitations? Because human beings are notoriously ignorant when it comes to our own weaknesses, right? We don't like thinking about our own weaknesses. We don't like spending too much time thinking about where we suck and where we have limitations because it's uncomfortable. We want to focus on what we're good at, right? But you've got to be honest, think about a real weakness you have, be specific, and then talk about how you deal with it ongoingly, right? Like, I've got this weakness, but you know what? It doesn't hold me back because I deal with it by doing this. You will be required to have some good communication skills. Can you comment on this a little bit for us? Question 6 would be a great opportunity to take a deep breath. And then you're going to want to have examples. So you're going to want to have examples of communication. So ways that you are a communicator, specific documents that you have communicated to others. So examples of communication, told with purpose. So you're going to want to have a little bit of a story, right? So like I am a, and then maybe just say, talk about your skills specifically, right? When we talk about communication, it's such a broad field to talk about it. Communication comes in so many forms, right? From infographics to maps to poems to incident workplaces, reports, resumes, cover letters, novels, magazine articles, newspaper articles, photo collages, right? So we communicate in hundreds, if not thousands of ways. So tell the interviewer how you communicate. Tell them what communication skills you're good at, and then throw out a few examples, and then you will crush that question. If offered this job, are you willing to work some evening shifts? Okay. All I can really say here is just be honest, right? Don't mislead them. If you know for a fact that you cannot make evenings, you've got to look after your kids. You don't have any childcare. You got to be honest, right? And then maybe more importantly, you've got to go into that interview with all this stuff figured out, right? You need to know when you can work. You need to know when your hours are. You need to reach out and ask for help from grandma, from grandpa, from your cousins, whatever, right? Whatever the case may be, right? If the job asks for evenings and weekends, you should only apply for that job if you can do evenings and weekends, right? So have all of your stuff figured out before you go in the interview. So be honest and be prepared. Know your schedule. Yeah, know your own schedule before you go into the interview. What can you tell us about this company or organization, right? So this is, you've got to have your research with you, right? So you got to do that research. So have the research with you, or you've got to memorize, one or two or 1 to 3 key points. As specific as possible. All right, we only got 2 questions to go here. Why do you think we should hire you for this job? All right, so once again, we want to be position specific as much as possible. We want to talk about duties and responsibilities. So you want to talk about specific aspects of the job, right? Why do you think we should hire you for this job? You need to mention things that you'll be doing in that job, specific roles, specific duties, things that are listed in the job description, right? So maybe I'll write that down in capital letters. Job description. Some jobs that you apply for will be specific, and they'll tell you what you can and cannot bring to the interview, or they may not even mention that at all. But, usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, but, at least in my practice, they'll have a copy of the job description out during the interview. It's a good thing to refer back to. But it looks good if you bring it in yourself, right? So I would suggest that you bring in that document yourself and refer to it throughout the interview, right? So, and then the final one is, do you have any questions for us? And then, yes, you do, right? That's the answer. Yes, I do. You've got to have one question that's sort of, one question that I guess is sort of like in the holster. It's ready to go. Have a question that you can ask about the organization, about the job specifically. So you've got to have something ready to go and have something you've researched. And if you're drawing a blank, just do your best to sort of think of something, right? Just because that's what they want to see. They want to see that you're interested, that you want to know more, you're excited about the job. All right, that's all.